But you know, yeah, then you thought about that real quick. You were like, that's horrific. But you know, if you think about all these savories go together and you mix and match them, it's a beautiful harmony. It's a way to bring people together. Always the first thing to say about gardening is plant with the end in mind. Don't plant because some of y'all get catalog happy. You know how you be. January shows up. You're like, I'm ordering that. I'm ordering that. And then you get a sack of seeds you ain't going to use. And you don't know why you bought them. Plant with the end in mind. If your intention is to grow a garden that's going to keep you alive and give you the best nutrition, somebody today had a really great guide to nutrition in the garden. I don't know which group it was. It was across from my table. And I picked it up when I was walking up here and said, wow, this is really great because people can look up the nutritional value of a collard or whatever they're growing and figure out what's what. So if you whatever you want to do, make sure you have enough for your recipes. You want to pickle, make sure you have enough. You've budgeted enough for the crow and the worm, the sun and the rain. They're going to get 4 of them, so make sure you plan enough for that. So just make sure you have the end in mind. If you want to market your vegetables or whatever, then do that. If you want to display them at a state fair, I gave you a plug. then do that as well. Whatever your situation is, just make sure you're growing what you need. You're growing the varieties that you need, and that's very important. Let me think about this real quick. Sweet potatoes. Can we talk about that real quick? Sweet potatoes are another one of those crops like black-eyed peas and okra. We can eat the leaves and the actual fruit of the crop. So that's very important. In West Africa, when they say greens, they really mean amaranth and the leaves of edible plants. And cassava, they eat those fresh too. So sweet potatoes, I would grow the white yam or southern queen. They're the same thing, they just have different names. And there's I think Southern Exposure may have some potatoes coming out, I'm not sure. But I know for a fact that Steel Plant Company out of Tennessee, S-T-E-E-L-E, has those, and they're pretty affordable. You can buy them in bulk for really cheap if you're intending on growing enough for a community garden or school garden. Or if you're like sweet potatoes, that's all you want to grow, that's great. Make sure that you mound up the soil. I tend to grow my crops intercrops, like they do in West Africa, which saves space. I know people of African descent have their own 3 sisters. Only difference was it was the millet or sorghum, right? The field pea was a legume, and the gourds or the muskmelon or watermelon was the curcubit involved in that process. And these were planted between the potato mounds, or yam mounds rather, that had 8 or 9 crops each growing in them. So you really save a lot on water. You confuse the insects. Insects love monoculture. They hate multiculture. It's like an insect salad bar when you do monoculture. So it's really a cool way to do it. And if it's not just African stuff. If you know that there is a certain Ethiopian way to grow things, a certain, I don't know, whatever community you're in, it doesn't have to be ethnic even, a certain regional way you want to do things. If you want to do the historic gardening thing like everybody's doing, it's kind of crazy, but it's easy, the kind of 4-poster kind of gardens where you have like these raised beds and all that. You can do that too. I would think about how you label things. It's very important to label things accurately so that people know that not to touch the root, or they know what something is. I tend to want to label things in multiple languages so that, if you're in U Street and you got Central American folk and Ethiopian folk, why not put in Spanish, whatever, what have you, in English, what have you. But the bottom line is scientific names. Our kids need to learn science through this process. It needs to be you need to make gardening work harder for you than Mitt Romney is trying to be president. I mean, you really need to get out every bit of energy out of that plant and teach people a story. History is important too. But remember, our kids need to learn math and science as well. So use it as an opportunity to do those things. So make sure your plants are labeled in a way that reflects that. But also you can talk about medicinal uses. We want to talk about medicine really quickly, now that I tell you where to get some potatoes from. You can do, by the way, if you're really smart, and I know y'all are smart people, go to ethnic markets and take your dried legumes and plant them. Yeah. Look, we're going to go about a little. There we go. Thank you. All right. suckers right here? These are the second generation of some field peas black-eyed peas that I got from a Senegalese market in Harlem. A huge bag. And I said, you can plant a whole black-eyed pea. It's viable seed. I plant it in the ground, and I have a whole crop of Senegalese field peas. Right? Sweet potatoes. Go to the Asian market, get the purple ones, but the purple ones with the white inside, that was known by a different name in the plantations around this area. And that was considered the favorite sweet potato of the black community. Not this little orange Bruce's Yams number y'all be open can on Thanksgiving. And some of y'all look at me going, I don't do that. Those who laugh. Like the pumpkin pie Libby's. Yes. And don't get me started to glory greens. I'll cut you. You know your mother did not want you to eat no greens out of cans or that. You don't even know better. That's all right. We're going to have a healing service after this. So, you know, you can propagate. I think I almost propagated a yam one year, and it kind of failed because I didn't do the right things with it. But the sprouts started to grow. I did the whole thing. Sweet potatoes are easy. You learn how to make slips, and you can make different slips off of different sweet potatoes. That'd be awesome. So you know, that's there too. A slip is basically you kind of cut the potato, you kind of put it in some water, suspended, and it'll start to produce these rooted sort of cutting things, which you then remove, and then let themselves root further. And then you take those little plants with the roots dangling down, and you gently plant them in an appropriate mound. Now my secret is wood ash. I learned this from my grandfather, who's in his 90s, who grew sweet potatoes commercially after he stopped growing cotton. He was a migrant to D.C. That's how I got here. And he came here on a watermelon truck, halfway, and then caught the train because the watermelon truck was a little bit more of a bush ghetto experience that he really wanted to have. But needless to say, he's still here with us, the Ayahara, and still walking around pinching the nurses. And he's one of the old folks that gets up and talks about, you know, I'm 93 years old. I'm still walking 3 miles a day to church. So his thing is wood ash. And so they did lumber and they did sweet potatoes. And what he would do is they'd burn down a certain amount of the brush. And when you have the field, you know, sweet potatoes, they'd make the mounds, right? And they put the ash in there. Well, I didn't know that, you know, phosphorus, phosphate, I didn't know about all that stuff. Neither did my grandfather, but he knew what worked. And it was taught to him by, you know, and when he was a kid, the people who were born in 1860 were still alive. Think about that. These little chains of generations that go down. So that's my little secret sweet potatoes, making them nice and sweet, or whatever. So that's great. Now medicinals. I have a list of 20 things, which I'm not going to share all of it, because my grandmother was a hoodoo woman. I ain't even joking about that. She knew, you know, she knew what was what. And I asked her when I was growing up, what did you make? What did you, grow? What did you have for like healing? I'll tell you a couple things. The rest of them will keep secret. That's how we do. Not everything's for everybody to know. But those of you who are laughing, I know exactly why you're laughing. We got African, Caribbean, and African American left in this room with that comment. So, red pepper. You know how they use the capsaicin for like, arthritis and things like that now? She told me about that a long time ago before I even saw it. You know, taking red pepper and rubbing it on certain, a little bit, you don't want to go crazy because it's red pepper. But they would mix it with lard, which was their, solid fat. And they would do that. My grandmother was semi-urban. She grew up in Birmingham. She didn't grow up in the country. But when she was growing up in the 1930s, and there's a really pretty picture about her on the blog, afroculinary.com, and the Cooking Gene. She lived in a setting where you had these acre-sized gardens in the city. She said they slaughtered hogs in the city too, and cows. She said they had a milk cow, and she said they were deliberately in the black community, which was more rural than the white community. They were like huge fields where everybody would bring their hog and do the whole process right there in the city limits.